God knows the end before the beginning, isn't it?
Yes, he does.
Now, God now created Adam
Yes.
and Eve.
Yes.
Now put them in the Garden of Eden.
Yes.
If God knows the end before the beginning, which means obviously God would have known that
Adam was
Adam
Oh, he did.
or Eve
He did.
would have,
He knew they would sin.
they will sin.
Yes.
So why did he now still tell them, oh, see, knowing, because human nature,
Yes.
if I post a video and I say, don't watch this,
Yes.
that is when
What you wanna
rush
watch.
and watch it.
Yes.
And God now put it there and say, Akwevo, this tree, don't touch it. To every other thing, no touch. But God know they will touch it. So why did he punish them for knowing what they are going to do?
So,
I don't know if you get what I'm saying.
yes. So what really happened is the story of Genesis has to be properly explained. And the reason it has to be explained is this. Moses wrote the book of Genesis. And Moses was not there when all the events in Genesis happened. Because Moses was born in Exodus chapter 2 verse 2.
Okay.
So in order for Moses to write Genesis, a number of factors will come into play. Number one, God gave him a vision. Number two, there's what we call oral tradition.
Yeah.
Just like you have families sit down and transfer the stories
style.
to their children. So there was all of that. And then remember, Moses also was in the house of Pharaoh, where he had access to the best education in Egypt. So civilization was available to him.
Yes.
So which means all of these were the materials that equipped Moses to write Genesis. Now he didn't write Genesis as Genesis was happening. It was after the event reportage. So that means everything had finished. Now, so he's coming from an informed position. He's coming with advantage of information to document what happened. Which means the way he's going to document it will be different from a person who was there as things were happening, who didn't have the advantage of having all the information. Sure. So when Moses is writing, he will write in a particular way. Now, Genesis was Moses' teaching to an audience in Egypt that were in bondage. So the book of Genesis is God's promise of an exodus. Let me repeat. The book of Genesis is God's promise of an exodus to a people in captivity. So everything Moses will teach from Genesis 1 to the end will be to highlight the promise of God. How that God promised Abraham that even if Israel goes into captivity, he will bring them out of captivity. So with that background, Moses now begins to write God's plan. Then he begins to indicate how God expressed his love for man in creating man, giving man access to the entire garden and everything. And because the audience Moses is writing to will understand the use of tree, plant, fruit, he now employs those figures of speech.
So they're not literal.
No. They are not literal. The tree was not literal. The fruit was not literal. Adam was literal. Adam was literal. Eve was literal. There was no serpent. Serpent was a figure of speech.
Okay.
That's why the New Testament will say Satan, the old serpent. So that serpent was Satan. That serpent was Satan. But there was no tree and there was no fruit, because man didn't die, didn't sin by eating.
So what did God now tell them not to do?
So what actually happened is the New Testament is revelation. The Old Testament is mystery. Mystery means an information that requires explanation. So which means the New Testament will interpret the Old Testament. So how do we know what God really told them? So Jesus is speaking to his disciples, and he says to them, are you also without understanding? Do you not know that what goes into a man does not defile the man, but what comes out of a man? For from within the heart of man proceed evil thoughts, fornication, adultery, stealing, and all of that. So which means what Jesus was saying is that the fall of Adam was not eating something. It was a decision in his heart to disobey an instruction that God gave him.
So the disobedience,
Disobedience
in itself,
that is the issue.
the act.
The tree was not the problem. The fruits were not the problem, even if there was. What was the problem was, that's why in Romans chapter 5 verse 12, the Bible now clearly explains further. Wherefore, as by one man sin entered into the world, and death by sin. Then it says, for by the disobedience of one, all were made sinners. The disobedience is the issue. God is saying, don't touch it. Then you say, no, God, I will not listen. You touch it. Then out of touching it, the consequences of touching it, it's not God punishing man. It's like you tell your child, don't put your hand in that fire, it will burn you. and then you walk away and your child put his hand and the fire burns. You didn't burn the child. It is a consequence of that action. So the sin of Adam brought consequences, which was the punishment that we see on Adam.
Some people say that the apple, like, is sex.
No, it wasn't. It was disobedience. Romans chapter 5 gives you the whole detail.
So why did they not write it like that in the Bible now?
Not because of the way the Bible was written. The audience that Moses wrote that to understood. You won't understand because you're not that audience. For example, if I write a book today and I said, on my way to the studio to meet with Nedu and Bibi for podcast, it rained cat and dogs. Somebody born in 100 years' time who grabs my book to read. At that time, cat and dogs are no more a mode of communication. He would think animals were falling from the sky, except somebody is there who is here today who will say, no, in our time,
Amen.
rain, cat and dog meant the rain was heavy.
Context.
Which means every verse of the Bible, if we're going by this context, it
Yes.
means is referring to some certain people and talking to them in a certain language that they understand, not literally talking to us that existed now.
Right. So that's why the main substance of pastoring and teaching the Bible is what we call Bible interpretation. Scriptures must be interpreted. If you don't interpret scriptures, you will be preaching nonsense. And the first person who interpreted Moses, the prophets, and the Psalms was Jesus himself.
Okay.
So if Jesus had to interpret Moses, interpret the prophets, interpret David, then it means David, the prophets, and Moses did not communicate in literal terms. They communicated in a language that was peculiar to the audience that they were speaking to as at that time. Which means if you're going to understand the message, it must be interpreted. You must sit where they sat, hear what they had, then travel to our world, look for verbiage in our own context that explains what was communicated then. If you don't do that, you will not know the message. For example, the Bible has something that seems like a contradiction. Love not the world, neither the things that are in the world. If any man love the world, the love of the Father is not,
Not in him.
Then it now says, for God so loved the world.
So about you
So it
waiting
looks
not
like
love the
you
world.
say
Why
we shouldn't
can't
love the world and you're
Why you
loving the
can't-
world. Then it now says friendship with the world is enmity with God. A friend of the world is an enemy of God. Then I say go into all the world and preach. So I'm saying I shouldn't be their friend, but I should
Please,
go and
go
preach
and
to them.
preach to them.
So it seems like a contradiction, but there's no contradiction. The word world, 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 world. Friendship with the world, for God so loved the world. Love not the world. Go into all the world. That word world in English is just one word. But in the original Greek, which is the language in which the Bible was written, world has two words. There's a word called cosmos for world and another word called aeons for world. Cosmos is human beings in the cosmopolitan.
Okay.
Aeons is a way of thinking that contradict God. So if you don't have the advantage of knowing the original, you will keep saying contradiction. But when you now understand the original, you say, okay, love not the world will mean love not the aeons.
Yes, the
their
way
way
they
of
think.
thinking.
Yeah.
For God so loved the world will be God loves the cosmos.
people.
The people.
Oh.
So you must know the language. You must understand their worldview. You must understand their vocabulary. You must know where there are figures of speech. Oxymorons, metonymies, and all of that. They are all there in, because Bible is literature.
Now I understand why plenty pastors they preach within then they preach way, then they go backyard when they suppose they go front.
Because you must
Because
really
they don't understand.
You must understand the language, Greek and Hebrew, the original language. You must know it, and you must understand the worldview in which it was communicated.
Now understanding the world, it all falls in line with context.
Context
Context is
is king in Bible teaching.
right.
Context is king. You must have the pretext and the post-text to understand the context. But beyond context, there's also grammar, there's vocabulary.